After a couple of years of silence, Respawn is here at E3 2013 to show their debut game after an acrimonious split with publisher Activision and developer Infinity Ward back in 2010. That game is Titanfall. Titanfall is a multiplayer-based shooter involving really nimble human players and really giant, powerful mech characters in a fairly open world that, in something of a catchphrase for this year's E3, is trying to mix the idea of single-player and multiplayer gameplay.
We set out to do something new, different with Titanfall. It's something that's familiar, close to home, close to what some of the team was good at, but at the same time kind of pushing the boundaries, doing something that feels really tight, really tactical, but good and new.
Basically, if you boil it down, we're making 2 games, maybe 3 games. You've got all the AI and the multiplayer campaign mode, trying to make sure that those grunts don't mess with players in a cheap way, balancing the Titan against pilots, getting that loop. I'm excited to see what happens. When you take something like this that's so free, I'm excited to see what people do with it.
The story setup isn't that original, and stop me if you've heard this one. There's a revolutionary war in a distant future involving spaceships and settlers. Where Titanfall finds its footing, so to speak, is in the introductions of these giant mechs as distinctive characters in their world.
Some of the toughest things were the balance, because it really is it's this big versus small, the David versus Goliath kind of aspect of it, and balancing that alone is hard. And then once you get into the levels, there's areas of the levels where only pilots thrive. There's areas of the level where Titans are kind of more dominant. And it's almost 2 levels in one, blended together and balanced across the way the levels flow and the way the gameplay loop kind of flows. So it's a really tough thing to get right. And it took us a long time to really nail that kind of balance.
On foot, the game looks a lot like a futuristic Call of Duty. You can see a lot of interface stuff that takes directly from games like Call of Duty and Battlefield. There's a rapid sense of movement to the players and their ability to jump and jetpack and run along walls and do the sort of parkour style traversal that we've seen in other games and not so much in the first-person shooters that we've been playing this generation. But more importantly, as the battle progresses, you earn the ability to call down from orbit your robot suit, which is called a Titan. They're not slow, they're not lumbering, they're pretty speedy weapons of destruction. The dynamism on display as the Titans go about the battlefield wreaking havoc and human players take a more stealthy approach and claim objectives is something that we don't see very much of in games right now, and it's the most exciting thing that I think Titanfall has going for it.
It comes down to the way a lot of us feel about really good FPS multiplayer, getting weapons to feel proper, getting them to feel analog and realistic, getting the sway and all that stuff to feel right. It's just really important to try to emulate when we go to the firing range, we're trying to emulate what's out there in real life and then bring it into this exotic environment that is, Titanfall.
As an exclusive to Xbox One and the PC, it's doing interesting things with the cloud power that Microsoft has really hitched their wagon to with their new system.
Put our dedicated servers on there, host those to take away any type of host advantage or anything like that, have more stable experiences for the players, but also get that AI and that single player experience into the multiplayer. That's all handled on the cloud. So that's something that we weren't able to really do before on console.
There is no local play for Titanfall. It's an online-only, all-multiplayer game that attempts to integrate elements of the single-player cinematic experience into the gameplay.
So what it allows us to do is offload all of that AI processing, all of that, all of the single-player stuff onto the cloud. So now that saves processing time on the box, so we can do more. We can bring you a more lifelike environment.
The game is really smooth. They seem to have nailed a good balance between enemies that go down quickly with their sort of popcorn enemies, as they call them, which are AI-controlled bots that everyone can kill for points and to accomplish objectives, and the human players that will be populated into matches. There's a good sort of rhythm to the game, it seems like, and we're all pretty excited to give it a more thorough looking at when it's playable at other shows this year.